The signal came in the small hours when the sky above the Nevada listening post was empty and calm. Commander Laura Pierce was awake. She had been awake for many nights. The array hunched like a row of silent eyes in the desert. The machines had learned to watch and wait. When an unexpected pattern appeared on the screen, the room hummed as if a living thing had noticed it. Laura sat closer to the console. The trace on the monitor was weak. It had the rounded rise and fall of an old-fashioned distress tone, but the code lines that followed were not from any friend or ally. They belonged to a colony world with a soft name and softer life. The Lethari, the database said, a people who grew in warm light and shallow seas. They were not fighters. They had no ships suited for war. Their cries were not meant to cross many borders. The message was short. It said their star system had been breached and that a great fleet burned every world in its path. It begged for help. It asked for anyone who would answer to come quickly. The code block had a locator, but it was damaged by noise. The address was half a map and half a plea. Laura felt the old cold rise in her chest. She had read reports and seen footage of the Core Dominion. She had watched their raids in clean feeds. They moved like storm fronts. They left worlds black and empty. The Lethari were small and soft. The idea of the Dominion appearing at their doors sent a sharp edge through her stomach. She called Captain Ryan Carter by secure line. He came within minutes. He had the tired look of a man who had been told too many times that the galaxy would sort itself out. His hands did not shake. His jaw was set in the way of leaders who must choose where to stand. "We got a distress signal," Laura said. She did not raise her voice. She let the machine speak. "Lethari system, possible core movements. I want to pull a scan and push this up the chain." Ryan studied the screen. He read the broken locator and the soft words of the plea. He rubbed a hand over his chin and let out a breath. "If the core are there, they will not give warning. We should move." "We need clearance," Laura said. "Clearance will slow us. People will die while they stamp forms. We do not always have the luxury to wait." They both knew that stepping forward without orders would carry risk. A task force that answered a call from a weak world could be accused of provoking a larger war. The Core Dominion liked to paint any responder as an act of aggression. The political courts in the core weighed law more than lives. Still, the broadcast on Laura's screen was not a theory. It was a voice that trembled with fear. Laura made a choice. She told the operations officer to prepare an emergency scout launch. The order rolled across channels and woke men and women who had arranged their lives around drill schedules and careful timings. Engines were readied. Suits were checked. The small fleet that could be mustered on short notice gathered like a second heartbeat beneath the desert. Among those who prepared was Olivia Brooks. She was a medic who had learned to keep the hand steady when the world shook. She did not like the term Deathworlder, though others used it as a title and a warning. Their people had lived on hard earth. They had learned to mend their own injuries and to build from scraps. Olivia tied her hair back and checked the pain monitors in the med pack. She had a calm face and quick hands. She thought of the message on the screen and how it begged for help. The scout ships cut through the silence of the outpost and into a starfield like a handful of bright seeds. They did not travel with the swagger of great battleships. They glided with a purpose. The map the array had made was ragged, but it was enough. The pilots set their course for a point where the signal had been strongest. For dozens of hours, the small fleet moved across empty space. The crew took turns at the windows to watch for lights. They spoke little. Sleep came in short fits. When the world before them at last bloomed on the screens, the captain's voice carried a low, hard sound. The Lethari homeworld was not like the worlds the crew had left. It looked gentle from distance. Pale blue seas and wide green fields folded into one another, but the surface told a different story. Great black scars marched across the continents. Cities were reduced to ash. Smoke rose like low clouds from shattered villages. The sky itself seemed to have been scratched. The scout fleet dropped toward an open bay where a cluster of ruined platforms rose from the water. Machines were still burning. Small craft lay flipped and broken on the shore. The Lethari did not show themselves at first. The scouts slipped among the ruins and found the survivors hiding in the shadows of their own homes. They were thin and careful people. Their skin had a warm tone that drank the light. Their eyes shone with fear. They spoke in a language that warped the sounds into music. An elder woman with hair like pale seaweed stepped forward when Olivia approached with a med kit. Laura spoke a few phrases she had pulled from the database. The elder's hands trembled as she took the offered water. "We were not ready," the elder said through bite-sized words and gestures. "They came like night. The ships burned. We ran." Olivia set a bandage on a child's arm. The child's name, when Laura asked, was simple and light. He had a thin laugh that came out with the pain. He let the medic work and watched as if he had not learned to be afraid of helping hands. It took days to map the damage. The Dominion had not only attacked, they had watched and chosen what to break. They had targeted the things that would make the Lethari whole again. Water pumps were clogged. Seed stores were gone. The Dominion did not need to utterly kill a species to crush it. They only had to take the life out of the life support systems. Captain Carter and Commander Pierce argued over the next steps. The easy path was to withdraw, to report, to leave the Lethari with a promise of help that might come in months. The right path, if one could call it that, was to stay and try to mend what could be mended. Ryan thought of the reports that would call them meddlesome. Laura thought of the choir of small voices that had called on the human ears. "We can try to move survivors to a safer moon," Ryan said. "We can try to reroute water and plant seeds, but any action here looks like occupation to the Dominion. If they return and brand us as invaders, they will not stop at threats." "If we leave now, they will come again," Laura said. "They will finish what they started." They found another voice in the ruins. An elder who had been spared by the smoke lifted his head when soldiers kneeled to listen. His name was Yaleth in the database. He spoke slowly and with a careful measure. "You came because you heard us," Yaleth said. "We did not expect help from a species that lives with storms and sharp ground. We expected songs, not war, but we have seen war now. We wish only to live." The Lethari did not ask for weapons. They did not ask for ships. They asked for hands that could fix things and for minds that knew how to plan. The very nature of their plea settled like dust on the human shoulders. The crew of the scout ships knew how to survive in hard places. They knew how to take apart and make new. They had been labeled Deathworlders because they had learned to be tough, not because they sought conquest. Orders came through the net from command. Any unsanctioned interference would have political consequences. The brass asked for proof, for coordinates, for a secure channel that listed the names of the attacking force. The transmissions tried to dress the truth in careful language. The Lethari were allowed to talk in sorrow. The Corps were allowed to be called rumors until a court said otherwise. Laura sat in the command tent and listened to the messages. She watched a screen that showed the slow spin of bureaucracy. She heard the voices of administrators, distant and polite, that spoke of treaties and risk. She also watched a child hand water to another child, and act as quiet as breath. In the end, the humans on the ground did what the humans on the screen delayed. They began to fix. The engineers were rough hands with fine minds. They took apart pumps and found the shards of armor that had jammed the gears. They found seed pods that had been tried to burn but were still dry and viable. They cleared channels that had been dammed with metal. All of this work did not require permission slips. It required sweat. The Core Dominion did not come back right away. That silence did not comfort the people. It left them with small nights of uneasy sleep. The survivors were hungry for small kindnesses. They had never seen the human way of moving quickly and making do. Olivia taught the Lethari to clean a wound without scaring the child more. She learned their music in small pieces and used it to calm the injured. In the evenings, Laura and Ryan walked among the makeshift shelters. They listened to the stories of the survivors. There was one family that had lost a son to a burned field. There was a craftsman who had watched his tools melt in the heat. Even the smallest complaints turned into plans. The humans listened and made lists. Lists became tasks. Tasks became work. The simple acts of repair changed something in the island of survivors. Where fear had tightened their faces, there was now a small slackening. A woman who had not left a corner of ruined wall now tried to sweep. Children were taught to plant the first green shoots that would be proof of tomorrow. They learned that help could come without asking for battle. But the Core Dominion was not a monster that could be appeased by kindness. It ruled by a cold logic that used fear. Its fleet surveyed borders and left marks for others to read. At the edge of the Lethari system, a shadow moved. The human sensors picked up distant ships that did not belong. Ryan and Laura watched as a single signature painted itself across their screens. The signature was small at first. Then it grew. The line of Dominion vessels unfolded like a long, dark hand. Their shapes were hard and clean. They fitted together like a single thought. The Corps had felt a disturbance and had come to see who had made it. Orders from the inner command tightened like a vice. They wanted to know whether the humans on the ground had started a war. They wanted to know if the Lethari forces were being used. Ryan responded with a calm voice. He told them the truth and omitted nothing. He said the humans had helped. He said the Lethari were alive where they had been dead. He also said that the core fleet had come to the system. The messages rolled across the net and into the listening halls where the diplomats weighed words. Each message might become a reason for a new line of ships. Each sentence was a brick in the wall of a coming decision. Ryan and Laura had to be careful and quick. They moved to meet the Corps. The human ships assembled a fragile line between the survivors and the arriving fleet. They were not a match for the Dominion in power. They did not pretend otherwise. What they had was speed and a knowledge of how to use the small things to hurt the large. They had pilots who could weave through debris and engineers who could turn the environment into a trap. When the Corps opened their comms, their voice was like metal. They called the humans intruders and told them to withdraw. They said the Lethari had been a test, an example. They spoke of order and of lessons the Dominion planned to teach across the stars. Laura stood in the command ship and answered with a steady voice. She said nothing the Corps wanted to hear. She said that no empire had a right to burn life into silence. She said the humans would not stand aside while a species was erased. In the last light before engagement, the Lethari elder Yaleth came to the human line. He stood small in the shadow of engines that had once seemed to dwarf his people. He placed a hand on the side of a human hull, as if blessing a machine. His face was not full of hate. It was full of a simple, quiet need. "You heard us," he said with the words Maria taught him from the basics of human speech. "You came when others only sent paper. For that, we will remember." Laura watched him and felt the weight of what they had done and what they might lose. The stars seemed to hold their breath. The small fleet that had come to a soft world braced itself. It knew that in a few hours everything might change, for good or for ruin. The human crew checked their harnesses and their guns. The med tents were stocked. The people of the Lethari clung to the new lessons they had learned. They had hope. Hope in a galaxy like theirs could be a dangerous thing to hold. Outside the command dome, the night wore thin. The quiet that had fallen over the ruined world was not peace. It was a pause. The core fleet arranged itself into a shape that promised fire. The human line waited, small and deliberate, like a blade about to be set. Laura felt the same old roughness the label had tried to hide, the mercy of people who had learned to be hard so they could be kind. She did not know how many would live to tell the story, but she knew what she would answer if the question came. When the first Dominion ship dropped weapons into its firing arc, Laura tightened her grip on the rail and breathed in. She had no illusion about the thunder that would come. She only had the certainty that they had chosen to stand. And sometimes a choice, clear and stubborn, could change the shape of the sky. The first blast from the core ships lit the sky above the moon like a broken sunrise. It was not meant to destroy anything on the ground. It was only a warning, sent to frighten the humans into stepping aside. Captain Ryan Carter stood very still as the light faded from the command screens. He understood the message clearly. The Dominion wanted obedience. They did not wish to waste energy on someone they believed too weak to matter. Ryan did not move. Commander Laura Pierce stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the scanners that showed the core ship spreading into formation. The electronic air in the room felt tight and heavy. Even the younger officers stopped breathing for a moment, waiting for the command that would decide their fate. Ryan spoke with a steady voice. "We hold position. They intend to scare us. We will not help them." Laura nodded. She knew he was right, even if the choice carried danger. The Lethari shelters below needed more time. Every minute they bought could mean a life spared. A sound like a quiet blade sliding across stone came through the speakers. The Corps commander had opened a channel. His voice was calm, cold, and without emotion. "Humans, you stand where you do not belong. The Lethari are weak. Their loss is the price of balance. Move aside. You are not our enemy unless you choose to be." Ryan leaned toward the microphone. "We will not move," the core replied after a short pause. "Then you choose death." The signal cut off. No more words, only the dark space between two sides that would soon ignite. On the surface, Olivia Brooks felt the ground tremble as the sound of engines far above reached them. The clinic around her was made of broken walls, patched metal, and whatever else the humans could gather. It smelled of smoke and medicine. The Lethari inside watched her with wide, frightened eyes. A little boy who had come in with a bruised arm clung to her sleeve. "Will the sky fall again?" he whispered. Olivia crouched so she could look at him closely. "No," she said softly. "We will try to stop it. Stay close to your mother. You will be safe here." The boy nodded a little, though she could see fear still hiding behind his eyes. He had seen too much for someone so young. Olivia stood and looked through the open doorway. The sky had begun to glow as the battle line became brighter. Above, the first attack began. The core cruisers moved like dark blades through space. Their red engines cut through the black and their bright beams fired in long arcs. The human scout ships dodged with sharp turns, using their smaller size to slip between the attacks. Ryan watched the dance of light and motion. "They are studying us," he said quietly. "They will adjust soon." Laura did not look away from her screen. "We only need time. The shelters are not fully sealed yet." The humans did not aim to win. They only aimed to delay. They fired small bursts meant to confuse the enemy. They pulled debris into the path of the core beams. They shifted formation every few seconds. Far away on the core flagship, the Dominion commander watched their movements. His voice never changed as he spoke. "Deathworlders, difficult to kill, more difficult than expected." He gave the signal for the second wave. On the moon, Olivia lifted another injured Lethari onto a cot. She heard the sky rumble again, deeper this time. A woman nearby pressed her hands over her ears. "The sky is angry," she whispered. Olivia shook her head. "It is effort, not anger. They are fighting to protect you." A strong wind moved outside the clinic as the battle continued. Dust rose and curled around the shelters. The world felt like it was holding its breath. In orbit, the human ships were weakening. The core attacks grew stronger and more focused. The human shields began to turn yellow on the status boards. Every pilot felt the pressure in their hands as they gripped the controls. Laura pressed her lips together. "Ryan, we cannot hold this for long, not like this." Ryan exhaled slowly. "We do not need long, we only need the shelters to seal. Buy me 10 more minutes." He ordered the scout ships to scatter flares through the battlefield. The glowing orbs floated in space and bent the next core beams away. It was not a true defense. It was only a trick, but it worked. For a few moments the human line held firm again. Yalith, the Lethari elder, stood outside the largest shelter on the moon. The flicker of battle reflected in his eyes. A young Lethari beside him asked, "Will the humans win?" Yalith placed a gentle hand on the younger one's shoulder. "Winning does not always shape the end. Today they stand for us, and that is a kind of victory." But the sky changed again. A new alert flashed on Laura's console. She felt her stomach drop. "Ryan, another core fleet is entering the system." Ryan looked at the readings. A second wave of ships, larger than the first. "They planned this," he said. "They wanted us to come forward so they could crush us together." Laura swallowed hard. "We cannot fight both fleets." "No," Ryan agreed, "but we can make them chase us." He ordered a retreat into the debris field around the ruined Lethari platforms. It was dangerous, filled with sharp pieces of metal and shattered beams, but it was the only place where their smaller ships could move easily. The chase through the debris began. The human ships ducked between broken structures, using their knowledge of the field to stay just ahead of the core. The Dominion ships pushed heavy fragments aside, but they struggled in the tight paths. Laura spoke quickly. "We are pulling them deeper if they get careless." Ryan finished the thought. "We can make them hit something they cannot avoid." They found the largest piece of broken platform drifting slowly, a mountain of twisted metal thick enough to block even a Dominion cruiser. Ryan gave the order, "Fire at the anchors." 3 human ships fired together. The magnetic anchors holding the platform steady snapped off. The huge mass drifted directly into the path of the lead core cruiser. Laura held her breath. The cruiser tried to turn, but it was too large. The platform slammed into it, cracking the hull and sending a shockwave through space. Pieces of metal burst like sparks. "One down," Ryan said softly, but the rest were still coming. Laura scanned the horizon. "They are slowing, but the second fleet will reach us soon. We cannot hold this place." "We are not here to win," Ryan said. "We are here to buy time." There was a quiet moment between them. "Then what now?" Laura asked. "We prepare for our last stand." The shelters on the moon were sealed at last. Families huddled together as the shaking of distant blasts became softer. Yaleth closed his eyes and whispered a small prayer in the old Lethari language. The core ships reached the humans again as the debris field thinned. They fired with full strength. Human ships cracked and fell apart. One scout burst into a cloud of light. Laura shouted, "Shields are fading," Ryan responded with calm. "Push debris into their path. Use everything." The pilots pushed large pieces of wreckage toward the core ships, forcing them to dodge. It slowed the Dominion, but not enough. When the second fleet arrived, the stars filled with bright engines. Hundreds of them. Laura's voice trembled. "We cannot hold this, Ryan." Ryan lowered his head for a moment. "I know." He looked at the map, the moon, the shelters, the thousands of Lethari lives. "We must pull the core away, make them chase us into empty space. Give the civilians time, give them a future." Laura nodded slowly. "You mean sacrifice ourselves?" "If that is the cost," Ryan said, "then yes." The order went through the human fleet. They broke away from the debris field and began to retreat into the far dark. They were fast, but not too fast. They needed the core to believe they could be caught. The Dominion followed all of them. Soon the entire warfront had moved far from the moon. On the surface, Olivia stepped outside and looked at the quiet sky. No explosions, no flashes, only silence. Yaleth stood beside her. "Is it over?" he asked. Olivia shook her head. "No." "But the danger moved away from us. Someone drew it away." Yaleth closed his eyes. "Then the humans carry a weight that is not theirs." Olivia felt tears rise. "Yes," she whispered, "they do." Far away in the dark stretch of space, the human fleet continued the retreat, drawing the core deeper and deeper away from the moon. Laura looked at Ryan. "We are not escaping, are we?" Ryan gazed out at the stars where the enemy lights grew brighter. "No," he said. "We are buying time." He placed his hand on the console, steady and calm. "And time," he whispered, "is life." The human ships moved deeper into the dark space beyond the moon, engines glowing like moving stars. They did not fly with the speed of escape. They flew just fast enough to make the core believe the chase would end in a clean capture. Behind them, the Dominion fleet spread wide, forming a long line that stretched across the black. The core believed this battle was already over. Captain Ryan Carter did not share that belief. He watched the scanners with steady eyes. Every choice he made now would shape the last hours of their fleet. He looked toward Commander Laura Pierce. She met his gaze with a tired but determined expression. "They are getting closer," she said. "I know," Ryan answered. "But the farther they follow us, the safer the Lethari become." The room shook gently as a distant blast rippled across space. One of the human ships had been struck. A bright flash appeared for a moment, then faded. Someone's voice broke on the comms, then went silent. Ryan closed his eyes briefly. He did not allow himself to feel grief yet. Laura did not speak. She simply tightened her hands around the rail in front of her. The core fired again. The human ships swerved. Their engines burned hard. The chase grew sharper. Far behind them, the moon hovered quietly in the dark. The Lethari shelters were silent now. Families sat close together, listening to the distant echoes of war. Olivia Brooks walked through the shelter hall with a calm step, checking on the children and elders. The dim lights overhead cast soft shadows on the walls. One child tugged her sleeve. "Will the humans come back?" Olivia knelt down and brushed the child's hair gently. "Yes," she said. "They will come back when it is safe." The child looked unsure. "But what if the sky breaks again?" Olivia looked at the ceiling as if she could see the battle far above through the layers of rock. "Then we will stand together," she said, "and we will survive." Yaleth stood nearby. His old eyes were heavy with worry. "You reassure them well," he said softly. Olivia nodded. "They need hope right now." Yaleth looked upward. "And who reassures the humans?" Olivia did not answer. She simply looked toward the sky again. In space, the chase tightened. Ryan's fleet reached a region filled with long, thin clouds of cosmic dust and drifting stones. The dust glowed faintly with starlight, swirling in slow patterns. The stones moved lazily through the dark, waiting for any force to disturb them. Ryan pointed to the map. "This is where we turn," Laura frowned. "It will be dangerous for us." "It will be worse for them," Ryan said. He ordered the fleet to curve sharply into the dust field. The human ships slipped inside like shadows. The Corps followed, confident in their firepower. Inside the dust field, visibility grew low. The Corps beams scattered in the swirling particles, weakening as they traveled. The stones drifted in unpredictable paths. It became harder for large ships to move quickly. Ryan saw his chance. "All ships," he said, "prepare to break formation. We will divide into two groups. Group 1 draws them deeper. Group 2 uses the dust to strike from the sides." Laura tapped the console. "Group 2 will take heavy fire once they reveal themselves." "Yes," Ryan said. He did not say anything more. She understood. Many would not return. The order spread quickly. Half the human ships veered left into thicker dust. The other half continued straight ahead. The Corps, confused by the sudden split, slowed for a moment. Their large ships were not designed for sharp turns inside such a cluttered region. The humans used that moment. Group 2 emerged from the dust clouds and fired a series of sharp, focused shots at the flank of the Corps line. The blasts did not destroy any Dominion ships, but they damaged shields and broke the careful formation the Corps tried to keep. Laura watched the readings. "They are struggling to keep order," Ryan nodded. "Good. We cannot win by force, but we can win by disruption." The Corps responded with heavy fire. Several human ships were struck. One turned into a burst of fire and dust. Another spun out of control, engines flickering. Far away in the shelter, Olivia felt a small tremor run through the ground. A low rumble followed. She paused. "That was close," she murmured. A Lethari woman beside her whispered, "Are we safe?" "For now," Olivia said gently. "The fight is moving away." Back in space, Ryan's fleet continued their maneuver. He watched the map as Group 2 curved behind a cluster of stones, using them as cover. The Corps beams hit the stones instead, shattering them into thousands of glittering fragments. Laura looked at the readings closely. "Ryan, the Second Corps fleet is adjusting speed. They are trying to surround us." Ryan breathed out slowly. "They are smarter than we hoped." He knew the time for clever maneuvers was ending. The Corps had too many ships. They were learning too quickly. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and nearly out of fuel. "Laura," he said quietly, "send a final message to the shelters. Tell them we will hold as long as we can." Laura typed for a moment, then nodded. "It is done." Ryan stood straighter. "And now we make our stand here." The human fleet turned sharply, forming a half-circle inside the dust field. The Corps closed in from both sides. The glowing particles swirled between them, catching the light of distant stars. The first Corps volley shook every ship. Panels flickered. Sparks jumped. The humans returned fire, their shots tearing through the dust like brief flashes of lightning. Laura leaned against her console as the floor shook again. "Shields at 30%, she said. Ryan gave the next order. "All ships push forward, close range. They cannot use their full weapons if we are too close." It was a desperate plan, but it was the only one they had left. The human ships surged toward the Corps line. The Dominion fired rapidly. 2 human ships burst into flame. Another spun out and collided with drifting stones. Ryan kept his voice steady. "Hold the line." Group 2 emerged from behind a cluster of rocks and slammed into the Corps flank again. They cut across the formation, firing as they went. Laura looked up. "They are confused. Their formation is breaking." But the Corps recovered quickly. Their ships shifted with cold precision, trapping Group 2 between 2 heavy cruisers. Ryan watched as 3 human ships disappeared in sudden fire. His shoulders tightened. The Corps commander finally spoke again, his cold voice echoing across the comms. "Deathworlders, you resist well, but this is the end. You cannot stop what comes next." Ryan cut the signal. "We do not need to stop them forever," he said. "We only need to slow them." Laura stared at him. "Ryan, how much longer can we survive?" He looked at the damage reports, at the blinking red lights, at the list of ships already gone. "Minutes," he said honestly. Above the moon, the dust field had begun to glow with the light of dozens of battles. Each explosion sent waves of particles drifting like slow sparks. The human ships fought with desperate skill, but they were shrinking in number, and yet they still held the core back. In the shelter, Yaleth felt a sudden stillness in the air. He looked at Olivia. "They are close to the end, are they not?" Olivia nodded with a soft, painful breath. "Yes." Yaleth lowered his head. "Then we owe them more than life. Owe them remembrance." The battle above reached its hardest point. Ryan's last group of ships fought side by side in a tight circle, pushing back against crushing waves of enemy fire. The dust field blazed with streaks of red and blue. Laura gripped the railing so tightly her hands turned white. "Shields gone." The command room shook violently. Sparks flew from the panels. Smoke drifted near the ceiling. Ryan remained standing, though the deck trembled under his boots. "Then let us make our last move count." He ordered the ships to push deeper into the dust, where the particles grew thicker and unstable. The core followed, unable to resist the chance to finish them. Inside the heavy clouds of dust, the core beams weakened. Their sensors struggled to target the human ships. The humans used this moment to fire a combined burst of energy at the closest core cruiser. The blast hit a weak point. The cruiser exploded in a bright flare that lit the entire field for a moment. Laura's breath caught. "That was a good strike," Ryan nodded. "A small victory, but perhaps enough." But the core regrouped. Their ships spread out, blocking every escape path. The humans were surrounded completely now. Laura looked at Ryan. "There is no way out." Ryan took a slow breath. "I know." A long silence settled between them. Then Ryan said softly, "But there was never meant to be a way out, only a way to protect the ones behind us." The core fleets charged their main weapons. Beams brighter than any before began forming along the hulls. Ryan whispered to himself, "At least the Lethari will live." The engines of the core ships glowed brighter. The human ships prepared for the final hit. Laura closed her eyes for a moment, letting out a slow breath. But before the core fired, something unexpected happened. A shockwave rolled through the dust field. A distant point of space flickered. Another signal appeared on the scanner. Laura stared at it. "Ryan, something else is entering the field." Ryan blinked. Reinforcements, but from where? The scanners lit up with new shapes, unknown, fast, powerful, and coming straight toward the core. The entire field began to vibrate with the arrival of something neither side had expected. Ryan felt his heart rise. "Laura, this is not over." The core fleets hesitated for the first time. The humans stared at the screens as the unknown ships formed a massive formation in the distance, their engines glowing like rising suns. Help had come. But no one knew from where, or why. Only one thing was certain. The battle was about to change. The dust field glowed with strange new light as the unknown ships moved into the battlefield. Their engines were bright, steady, and silent, like suns drifting through the dark. The core fleets, once confident and cold, slowed their advance at the sight of the approaching formation. Even their discipline could not hide their hesitation. The newcomers did not look like any force the core had ever fought. Captain Ryan Carter stood completely still as the scanner painted the shapes more clearly. The screens traced smooth outlines, long curved hulls, and wide glowing patterns along the sides. They did not match any known fleet. They were not human. They were not from any species on the Alliance charts. Commander Laura Pierce looked at Ryan. "Do you know who they are?" "No," Ryan said softly. "But they are not core, and they are not firing at us." Laura watched the radar as the new ship spread into two wings and then locked into a tight triangle formation. "They look organized," she said, "very organized." The core sent a warning signal across open space. It came through the comms as a sharp metallic tone that echoed strangely inside the command room. "This conflict is internal," the core commander said coldly. "Unknown fleet, state your intent or withdraw." The unknown fleet did not respond. A long moment of silence filled the dust field, like the whole galaxy was waiting to breathe. Then the new ships fired. It was not a wide blast. It was not a large flame. It was a clean, straight line of energy that cut through space like a blade of white fire. The beam sliced across the nearest core cruiser before the Dominion could even raise full shields. The ship cracked open in two. Flames spilled into the dust clouds, lighting them like a sunrise made of broken stars. Laura gasped. "They cut it clean in half." Ryan stared in disbelief. That was a precision strike, almost impossible at this distance. The core reacted with sudden fury. Their fleets opened fire at once, beams spreading out in every direction like lines of angry light. The unknown ships moved smoothly between the attacks. They did not dodge or swerve. They shifted in coordinated patterns like a single living creature. The core beams passed through empty space where the ships had been only a second before. Ryan watched the movement closely. "They're reading the attacks before they come," he whispered. "They predict them." Laura shook her head. "No fleet has reflexes like that, not even ours." The unknown ships fired again. 3 bright lines of energy flashed through the dust field. Another core cruiser exploded, then another. The core commander appeared once more on the human comms. His composed voice was tighter this time. "Deathworlders, unknown fleet. This action is a violation of all treaty lines. You attack a rightful operation of the Dominion, you will be dealt with." Ryan narrowed his eyes. "You invaded a peaceful world, you killed families, there is no treaty for that." But the core did not reply. Their ships turned and formed a wall of metal between the humans and the unknown fleet. They fired again, but the dust clouds ate their beams. Their attacks lost range. Their formation grew desperate. Laura saw it first. "They're going to fall back." Ryan nodded. "They have no choice. They can't fight both of us." The core fleet slowly withdrew, their engines burning hard as they pushed toward open space beyond the dust. They did not stop firing until they were almost out of range. A final blast struck a drifting stone and scattered dust across the field like fading sparks. And then the core were gone. The battlefield fell silent. Ryan exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. "Laura, send word to the shelters. The core are retreating." Laura typed quickly. Her hands were shaking, but she did not stop. "They will be relieved," she said softly. Ryan turned toward the screen showing the unknown fleet. "Now we have to face the next question," he said. "Who are they?" The unknown ships began moving again, slowly, calmly. Their glowing engines dimmed as they approached the human ships. They did not raise weapons. They did not form attack lines. They moved like guardians returning to a quiet path. Laura watched nervously. "Are they friendly?" "I hope so," Ryan said. One of the ships moved closer than the others. A soft white light glowed from its front panel. Then a message reached the human comms. It was quiet, soft, almost gentle. "Humans," the voice said, "your struggle has been seen. Do not fear." Ryan blinked. "You speak our language," the voice answered. "We learned quickly." Laura looked at Ryan with wide eyes. "They learned our language. How?" Ryan did not know. The voice continued. "We are the Avari. We do not seek control. We do not seek tribute. We came because we heard a cry." Ryan stiffened. "A cry? The Lethari distress call was meant for another ally. Did it reach you?" The Avari ship glowed softly. "Yes, it reached us through a wave path not made for your machines. We heard sorrow, we heard fear, we followed it." Laura whispered. "They came to help," but Ryan was cautious. "Why help us?" the voice replied. "Because the weak should not fall when others stand." Laura swallowed. "That is almost what we believe." "Yes," the Avari said. "We saw your actions. You protected those who were not your own. You fought when you had no hope of victory." The Avari paused, as if choosing their next words with care. "You fought as guardians, not conquerors." Ryan felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. "What do you want from us?" he asked. "We want nothing," the Avari said softly. "We will leave soon, but first we will heal what we can." Ryan exchanged a glance with Laura. She nodded slowly. "Let them," she whispered. Ryan spoke into the comm. "We accept your help." The Avari ships moved toward the moon. Their engines glowed brighter, sending gentle waves of light that drifted across the dust field. These waves spread into the cracks and shattered stones. They formed long lines of shimmering particles that began to pull broken structures back into place. Ryan stared in amazement. "They're repairing the environment." Laura watched the shimmering particles settle on damaged ships and burned debris. "They're healing everything they touch." Down on the moon, Olivia stepped outside as the shelters opened. The sky was filled with drifting white lights like soft snowfall made of stars. The Lethari gathered outside, lifting their faces toward the glowing sky. Yalith whispered, "This is a gift." One of the Lethari children reached up as if to touch the glowing waves. Light settled gently on the child's hand, warm and peaceful. Olivia looked at the horizon and saw the Avari ships moving in slow, graceful lines. "They're helping us," she said to herself. "Truly helping us." Back in orbit, Ryan watched the scene unfold. "They saved the Lethari," he said. Laura nodded. And us too, the Avari voice returned. Your wounded ships will be healed, your people will be safe, but you must leave this place soon. The Corps will spread lies, they will call you invaders. Ryan sighed. We expected that. The Avari continued, you cannot stay here, but your actions have changed the path of many worlds. Ryan lowered his head. We only did what we felt was right. That, the Avari said gently, is why we answered. A soft hum filled the ship as a beam from the Avari vessel swept across the hull. Broken plates repaired themselves, cracks sealed, systems flickered back to life. Laura gasped, everything is healing. Ryan felt a quiet warmth move through the ship as if the light itself carried comfort. Thank you, he whispered. The Avari replied, do not thank us. Thank the ones who cried for help. Their sorrow reached far places. The light faded slowly. The Avari ships drifted back. Ryan called out, will we meet again? The answer came like a soft wind. We watch the quiet places. When kindness becomes rare, we listen for it. Ryan nodded. I understand. You will not be forgotten, the Avari said. Then the light dimmed. The Avari ships blinked once, twice, and vanished into a ripple of space like stones sinking into water. The battlefield fell quiet. On the moon, the Lethari stepped into the restored fields and clean air, tears in their eyes. Olivia hugged the children as they ran out into the open ground. Yalith bowed to the sky. Back in space, Laura looked at Ryan. We survived, she said softly. Ryan nodded, and so did the Lethari. The remaining human ships gathered into formation. Engines warmed, their hulls shone with renewed metal. It is time to go home, Ryan said. Laura looked one last time at the peaceful moon below. Yes, she said, but we will carry this with us. Ryan stared into the stars where the Avari had vanished. The galaxy will tremble, he said quietly, when they learn what happened here. Laura smiled faintly. Not in fear, she said, but in wonder, Ryan agreed. Yes, in wonder. The human fleet turned toward the long path home, leaving behind a world saved by courage, sacrifice, and a mysterious kindness that crossed the stars. And the Lethari, once helpless and afraid, now watched with hope, knowing the humans had answered a call that was never meant for them, and in doing so had changed the galaxy forever.